Charlie!
What's so tough about a simple school day?
It's my room. I should be able to keep it the way I want to, right? Right.
Freaky Friday is a story of mothers and daughters. And if you've ever been a mother or a daughter, and any combination of those two, I think you really understand what a difficult path that is. In our story, it really is a mother and daughter trade places for one day. So each one of them gets to appreciate what the other one goes through.
Annabella, couldn't find a steady fella.
Understand how difficult their mother or daughter, depending on who they are. In some ways, they're sacrifices that they make for them.
I wish I could switch places with her for just one day.
I really think that people are so interested in this story, this body swapping in some ways between family members. The first Freaky Friday between a mother and a daughter, and it went on to do, there was the Father and the Son movie, and then there was the remake as well that was done for cable. I think it spurred all of this interest because there is this kind of primal fascination, that symbiotic relationship between mother and daughter, and wanting to really experience what it would be like to be on the other side of that argument. You know, if I could have just one day where my daughter would see what I go through for her.
Iron this, polish that, go here, go there.
And also the flip side, if I could have one day where my mother really understood what it was to be me, then maybe we wouldn't have this sort of awkward relationship where we're continually fighting for no reason.
What about your room? Perfect.
Sort of jockeying competitively for hierarchy, you know.
Honestly, Bill, that child has not got a clue about my life. Not a single clue.
Sounds like a picnic to me.
Life in kind of the Disney house was kind of an interesting place. It was the old Disney. It's not the new Disney, you know. It was all those Kurt Russell movies, and everything was very cute.
Max, you big hamburger.
And kind of...
Amazing, Andrews. Why didn't you tell us about her?
I shouldn't say out of sync with what was going on in the world, but it was slightly out of sync. You know, don't forget, you know, Vietnam was happening, and there was a very political time in the United States. And, of course, Disney didn't reflect that at all. They made very clean, wholesome movies, and that was their mandate.
Wow!
Ellen.
But it was a great, fun place to be. My fondest memories is, well, for example, driving the cart around the lot. They had the golf carts that you could get into on the weekends and, you know, just turn the key on and you could just like, drive around the lot. The friends that I made there. My friend Arlene Ludwig, who I've known since I was 7 or 8 years old, who I still know. That there's a real loyalty to Disney, a real family feeling to Disney. It isn't made up. It's actually a real family feeling. And you sort of feel like if you got into a jam and you needed to get your car out from being impounded, that they would lend you $600. That they're kind of, you know, aunts and uncles that would show up for you if you really needed them, and that you would also return that favor. Well, I was kind of a Disney kid. I'd done a lot of Disney movies at that point, with, you know, lots of animals, lions and camels and things like that, pigs. And Freaky Friday was one of 2 movies that I did for Disney at that time. Another one was called Candle Shoe. I think I was 13. It was a really strange time for me, I have to say. It was probably one of my most successful periods as an actor. And I can't say I really wanted to be an actor when I grew up. I was really hoping to be a director. And so my whole life, pretty much, I was thinking about what that would be, you know. For example, on Freaky Friday, I remember crew members teaching me things, you know, teaching me about depth of field and about the camera and being very interested in that. But it was also the beginning of a real self-consciousness for me, you know, where I didn't like the way my teeth were, I didn't like my body, I didn't like my face, and I didn't want to wear anything that, you know, you could see that were sleeveless, you know. I was just very, very self-conscious, and going through that kind of period is very hard to do on screen. So those movies, and specifically Freaky Friday and Candle Shoe, are the kinds of movies that I just can't watch, you know, because I have to put my hands in front of my face, because for me, in some ways, it was kind of a painful time. So I guess I was probably going through the same thing that Annabelle's going through in Freaky Friday.
Annabelle, say something.
Who can talk through all this scrap iron?
I'd never worn braces before, So they had to create these giant braces for me that were uppers and bottoms, so I couldn't really talk very well.
Gross.
Some of the scenes where I have to show both sides of my mouth, I think you notice that I can't really talk. But because I had a big split in my teeth, they also had to build like a split thing that covered up the split in my teeth. So the rest of the movie, I had to wear this funny thing in my mouth as well. So I don't talk very well in this film, you'll notice.
Now listen very carefully. I'm not Annabelle.
Who are you?
I'm her mother.
This movie was a movie primarily for little girls. And there is a little girl fantasy that, you know, that they're the ugly duckling who in some ways is underappreciated and never looks as good as the rock star out there.
Maybe by summer, though.
But that someday something will happen and a magic spell will come over them and suddenly they'll turn into Cinderella. And when that happens, suddenly everybody will appreciate them and everybody will think that they're the most beautiful and most sought after person on earth. I can't say that I shared that fantasy as a young person, but I know it's out there and it seems to be a convention in literature as well as in films. Making movies at Disney was not unlike making movies anywhere else. You had a welfare worker, a teacher. I would get lessons and bring them home and then bring them to the class and we would do my lessons.
That kid has no discipline. And the kid without discipline is the fault of the mother and the father.
Not necessarily, Mrs. Schmaus.
What am I saying?
You know, because I was a child actor, I never really knew anything else. All I really knew was, you know, working with other children as well and with adults who were kind of like my family. They taught me things and taught me the etiquette of filmmaking. You know, you always put your clothes away and you put them on hangers and you put them back in your dressing room. And there were rules that you had of good behavior on movie sets. So I suppose it's different than the way most kids grew up, but for me, it was just sort of the norm. All the movies I did at Disney had lots of animals in them. So the first movie I did at Disney, I remember, was called Menace on the Mountain, and it was with pigs. Well, my big memory of Menace on the Mountain, I don't have a lot of memories of Menace on the Mountain, was falling in the toilet at Disney. Where I tried, you know, I had all these petticoats on. I just had 1,000 petticoats on, and I really had to go to the bathroom, and I got myself up on the seat, but then I just fell in. I was, you know, drenched from head to toe, and I remember coming out and like, I didn't want to come out of the bathroom because I didn't want anybody to think that I wet my pants. I was just like crying, and the wardrobe lady came over and said, "It's okay, we have another outfit for you." So that's sort of my memory of Menace on the Mountain. Let's see, Napoleon and Samantha, the big memory, of course, was that I was bitten by a lion. So I was mauled by a lion, and he picked me up by my hip after shooting, and he turned me around and shook me a whole bunch of times, and I saw the whole world shake a lot in a horizontal position. As I was watching everybody run away from me, one of the trainers said, "Drop it," and the lion just went and just dropped me out of his mouth, and I went rolling down the hill. And the famous story is, of course, that the lion came running after me and gave me a big swat on behind and stopped me from, you know, going over a cliff. So that's my big Napoleon and Samantha story, which is kind of a big story. I still have a few scars to prove it. One Little Indian was a movie I made with James Garner. The day before I left for shooting, I did something stupid and went down the staircase and sprained my ankle. And so the first day of shooting, I tried to do hobbling, but there was a lot of running and running. And so they quickly put me in the hospital for 3 days and let my ankle work out, and then I came back to work. So I was really happy because they didn't fire me. I remember being very happy that I wasn't fired, because I had been on a few movies where people were fired, and I kept thinking, they're gonna fire me. I gotta try and not hobble because they're gonna fire me. That's what I remember. My memories of Candleshoe is really mostly about being in England with David Niven and Helen Hayes, you know, two great American actors, but Helen Hayes is an American actor, David Niven an English actor. But really, you know, being in Europe and being in England and the UK with actors of that generation, of that stature, was pretty amazing. I remember feeling very intimidated and kind of in awe of them. When George Lucas was first getting together Star Wars, he wanted Princess Leia to be much younger. And so at that time I came in and read for him, and We got the part and we started the first negotiations. And we quickly realized, my mom quickly realized that I was still under contract at Disney and that I had to fulfill the obligation of doing Freaky Friday and Candle Shoe, so 2 movies together. And I suppose there could have been some way for her to finagle out of it, but she made the wise decision to sort of stick to our promises and do both movies. And so perhaps if I hadn't done Freaky Friday and Candle Shoe, I might have been Princess Leia in Star Wars.
I like a more level-headed woman like you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean, Boris.
Well, Freaky Friday for me is a transition between being a child actor and being not necessarily an adult actor, but more of an adult-leaning actor. This is the movie that I did in between those years. So in some ways, it's a film where I'm trying to kind of find my way, where I still have some of the childishness of being a kid, but still some of the self-consciousness in some ways of the adolescent trying to become an adult. That's why I always say it's a really painful movie for me to watch. And I'm sure everybody at home watching this DVD is going to be laughing hysterically.
That's Boris Harris. What a fox. I mean, he's really something else. Mm-hmm.
You know, one of my big memories from the movie was all the water skiing stuff, because I had never been water skiing before. They sent me out on a water skiing mission. For about 3 days, I learned how to water ski, and I was just so sore and sunburned. And when it actually came time to doing the water skiing, they didn't let me do any of it. I did it all on a soundstage somewhere with blue screen. The Phil Hockey stuff was pretty carefully choreographed. I remember that it was one of those smoggy LA days in Pasadena where we were at that, like, you know, stage 1 smog alert. So there was lots of, you know, they had to pull us off the field a lot and, you know, put us into the air conditioning and stuff.
Foul! Yes, definitely a foul. Questionable.
I have lots of memories of all the different people I worked with on the movie. John Astin, great actor, who, you know, you can't forget was in the Addams Family. Gomez, you know, that was my hero at the time.
You know that slinky black dress you got? Why don't you wear that tonight? Well, I gotta run now, so anything else, I'll call you. Goodbye.
But there were other supporting actors that found their way in the movie, you know, Dick Van Patten and Ruth Buzzy.
The name of the game is winning. And we can only win this one if you remember one thing. Get Annabelle Andrews and get her good!
Honestly, my favorite scenes in Freaky Friday are with Barbara Harris. I think it's really just a great characterization by her, some wonderful acting, and great fun to see, you know, a 35-year-old woman or 40-year-old woman who is suddenly, you know, chewing gum and sliding into home plate and giving everybody pats on the back.
All right, I'm great.
You know, becomes completely silly. And in some ways becomes unself-conscious about her body and about her sexuality in some ways. It's just something that it's just fun to watch an older person go through.
Tell her I hope she does really well in the hockey game, because that is an important playoff and the whole team's counting on her. If she messes up, everybody'll hate me. Her.
One thing you need, young man, is a good old-fashioned spanking.
There was some discussion about my mannerisms, you know, what kind of mannerisms that she would pick up from me and what mannerisms I would pick up from her, but mostly she was on her own. And I have to say, she really got the hard part of the bargain in Freaky Friday, because she had to play baseball. She had to fall a lot. She had to skateboard. She was just constantly full of black and blue marks and was sore all the time. She had it tough going in this film.
Oh, this is good of you.
I have absolutely no training as an actor. I'm completely unqualified to call myself that kind of thing. No, I never took an acting class. When I was a young person, I remember there was a woman who used to help me, when I couldn't read myself, who used to help me learn my lines. But I think that's pretty much the extent of it. I have a hard time describing what I do as an actor. But I realize as I've gotten older that my mind works much more like a director. So for me, I appreciate the text, whether it's a novel or a screenplay. And I try to interpret that with all of the different vocabularies at my disposal. So let's just say I was a prop man, then I would say, you know, I think these glasses are the right type of glass that this character would use for their martini. And as an actor, I do the same thing, which is I try to refer back to the text, try to refer back to the screenplay and help the screenplay have a life of its own. I did try to assume a little bit of her personality, of Barbara's personality, or at least of her character's personality, when playing the switched version of her. And most of that was really in the dialogue.
What is this?
It's your usual rum raisin banana split breakfast.
Figures. What else would the junk food junkie eat for breakfast? That is about the most revolting concoction I've ever put inside my mouth.
Really, when you see the movie, it is kind of a strange, perverse world where you see a 13-year-old, you know, calling her father honey, you know, and you're thinking, well, there's something kind of inappropriate about this.
Oh, I was only kidding, Daddy.
Daddy? You've never called me Daddy before.
No, I never will again, Bill dear.
Or a, you know, a 35-year-old woman who is, you know, playing sports with a 16-year-old.
You know, most grown-ups don't want to play games. They're always too busy or something. But then, you're not the same as most grown-ups.
Come on, I love it.
Yeah, there's something kind of weird about the whole thing. And that's what makes the movie funny, actually.
This thing is getting out of hand. We're here to talk about grades, not my father.
Oh, Mrs. Andrews, did you hear what you just said?
Yes, I called my husband my father. Big deal.
Rather revealing, don't you think?
Now, when I see my relationship with my mother and everything that it went through, especially in the years of 14, 15, 16, I really appreciate this film. It just was a very difficult time for me, feeling like I was growing up and yet I couldn't drive. I had all of the passions of an older person and yet I had none of the freedoms. And then I also now really recognize in my mom, I see her wanting to teach me how to be an individual and how to be free, but wanting me to stay safe. And those two things really came into conflict a lot.
Oh, listen, Mom, I'm not very hungry. I mean, I'll go for that eggs and bacon stuff.
I want you to grow up to be healthy. That's all, Annabelle.
Come on, Mom, I'm gonna grow up and be a blimp.
She didn't want me to have to go through making mistakes. And of course, when you're 14 or 15, you've got to learn for yourself, so you have to make lots of mistakes.
Ugly-looking thing, isn't she?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I've seen her look better, but she's got a lot on her mind.
She better not have.
You've got to remember the movie was made a long, long time ago. I think it's 27 years. So this is really Disney's early attempt at talking about feminism.
If the shoes need a polish, I'd appreciate it.
Of course.
Atta girl. I do my job, you do yours, right?
Oink, oink, Daddy.
You know, it's a movie made for young people, so it does have a conventional spin on it. So let's say if you were making the movies maybe in the year 2000, she would be having these troubles with her mom and sort of trying to forge her identity. And in the end, she would realize that, you know, she needed to go it alone and become president of the United States. But in the movie that happened in the early 70s, the end is more, you know, someday she'll have a boyfriend and, you know, wear lipstick. That pretty much is, you know, were some very conventional aspirations for women at that time.
I'm so much smarter than I thought. So much dumber.
Oh, my darling, aren't we all? Oh, Annabelle.
Well, I still think that in the year 2003, I think that there's still, there's a lot of significant stuff in here for young people. Where, especially for young girls who are, you know, thinking about their moms and why they hate them, and why they can't seem to get along, and why they're tripping over each other all the time. It's a film that allows them in some ways to experience each other's differentness, and that hasn't changed. I think that mothers and daughters, and certainly fathers and sons and mothers, every day smack their heads and say, you know, why don't they understand what I'm going through?
As long as we're comparing Saturdays, I'd like to be in your shoes.
And I'd rather be you.
Bill, I wouldn't pursue this any further if I were you. You would not want to change places with Ben, believe me.